Hi, my name's Alban Welsh. I'm going to talk about, well, the birth of my son. He's about 7 months old today, actually. Thinking about the birth, it was quite a difficult time. Obviously it was, big change in my life and my wife's, and, well, joyous time. But, so as a bit of start with a bit of background information. Before the birth, me and my wife actually ended up living apart for a few months. What happened was the flat we lived in, we actually had a problem with mice and ants and damp, amongst other things. And obviously my wife being pregnant, it's not the type of environment you want someone like that to be in, so the only alternative we had was for my wife to actually stay at her parents. And then, while we waited for a house to come through, I, in that time, got a new job here in Wolverhampton, while my wife's parents lived in Swindon, so it was quite a distance that we had to stay away from each other. I ended up staying with friends for the first few months, well, obviously while my wife was in Swindon. Thinking about coming back to the actual birth, I was actually looking for carpets. We eventually got a house, and maybe that's what started off my wife, I don't know, we actually had somewhere to live together from then. But I got a call, it was 2 days before the baby was born on December 12th, and 2 days before, so December 10th, I received a call while I was actually looking for carpets. Strange place to get a call, but there you go. The girl's father called me that night, told me that the girl was in labour, so I kind of hurried home, hurried to my friend's house where I was staying. I was staying with four girls at the time, but when I got back, I told them what was happening. Obviously I was in a blind panic by this time, but they were really nice. They sat me down, gave me a cup of tea, went upstairs. They even packed my bag for me, ready to go. Gel's father actually came down all the way from Swindon to pick me up and took me down there. As soon as we got there, Gel got in the car and we just rushed off the hospital. Although it was like a 2-hour journey down there, it went pretty quick. Getting to the hospital, they checked Gail over. We ended up going for a scan. As I was saying, because we'd moved, all of Gail's visits to the midwife had been here in Wolverhampton, so they had scans here, but in Swindon they didn't. So one of the first things he said when they checked her over was that, get a scan, so they had something for their records. Now, when they took this, it turned out that apparently the baby was small. Nobody had said anything before this, but it was a bit of a shock to us. We were thinking, does that mean there's something wrong? They also mentioned that there was a lack of water around the baby. So what they had to do that night was, they hooked Gail up to a heart monitor, which gave a readout of both the contractions that she was having and the baby's heartbeat to make sure he wasn't in any distress if it fell too low. The next day they were contemplating whether they should start her off. Thursday night, which was December 11th, they actually decided in the evening that they were going to do it on Friday morning. They gave her something to start her off. Initially, contractions started to come along. They were coming, but they were quite far apart. When the contractions eventually did come, they kept her on to the heart monitor, but what actually happened was the baby's heartbeat started to drop quite a lot. The problem with this was that my wife being deaf, nobody there could actually sign apart from me, and the situation I had was that I was being there for Gail when she needed me, but we wanted to let our families know what was happening. I couldn't use my mobile in the hospital, so I had to nip out every few minutes, every 10 minutes or so, to let them know what was going on. The baby, as I said, the baby's heartbeat dropped. the initial time this happened, they actually just kept monitoring what was happening, like monitoring everything, and kept coming back every few minutes to check it. I mean, me and Gail were, had our eyes fixed to it, as looking at the readings as they came off. As I went outside one time with the mobile, called Gail's parents, called my parents, came back in to find all these nurses and midwives running around Gail, and Gail was in hysterics. She was crying. I kind of came up to her and, I think I did scream, I must have, because everyone stopped what they were doing. But, basically, I knew that they were rushing around there and they weren't telling her what the hell was going on, which is, it's a scary situation, especially, she's worried about the baby, she's worried about herself, and looking back now, I can't believe how much lack of awareness some people have. But in this situation, I just kind of went to Gail, "You okay? What's going on to her?" And she turned around and said she didn't know. All she knew was somebody looked at her and mouthed cesarean. And of course, up until this point, nobody said anything about a cesarean. So I kind of pulled aside one of the midwives and said, obviously, Gail's distressed, she wants to know what was going on. This midwife, she'd been quite good with us. She had actually sat down, she knew how to get on with Gail quite well. And so she called everyone out, sat us down, and she explained to Gail that what had happened was, obviously the baby was in distress because the heartbeat had gone down and they needed to perform an emergency cesarean. I certainly complained about the person who had just mouthed cesarean to Gail, because obviously threw her and myself into a bit of a blind panic. So, the midwife did come back and said she'd had words with them and told them about this. After that, the operation, waiting for the operation took a lifetime. It was only 40 minutes we had to wait, but that was a hell of a long time, thinking, everything's going to be okay, Gail's going to be okay. She was obviously quite emotional. She's not too good around hospitals anyway, so this didn't quite help. The actual operation itself, it was, initially it took some convincing for Gail to actually go through with it, but the sight of me in a surgical cap changed her mind. I suppose she thought it was quite funny. I suppose it was. But when she finally got in there, there was an anaesthetist, and I suppose, I acted as Gail's interpreter really, and I suppose it helped her because she could focus on me more, and everything that was being said came through me. That was hard for me, obviously, because I was trying to stay kind of, composed for her, but basically you just felt like breaking down and something like that. It was really hard. The operation itself, as I was saying, went in, they actually gave her an epidural which made her numb from kind of like, chest down. She couldn't feel anything throughout the operation, and I was too busy kind of looking at her and talking to her, and didn't even notice the fact that they'd taken the baby out. I heard some noise and I thought it was kind of like it sounded like they were kind of cleaning up, like a kind of vacuum thing to, clear out blood. But one of the midwives turned around to me and just said, would you like to see your son? And so I kind of just went, what? And then it finally clicked that the noise was actually a baby crying. I leaned back to see, all I saw were these two little legs waving around in the air, covered in this muck. They rushed them to like this little, it was like a little dish. I think they were just, they needed to weigh him and also clean him out to make sure there was, he had no muck kind of trapped in his his internal organs or anything. But after that, after they cleaned him out, they just brought him over and they plunked him into my hands. It's difficult to describe how that felt. I suppose blind fear was one emotion. Another one was, total elation. Total happiness. It was really, one of those moments, one of those life-changing moments. But, the only thing I could think of saying then was, how the hell do you hold the thing? Because I'd never held a baby before in my life. and at that time he was just so fragile. Thinking about now, I mean, he's changed such a lot. You wouldn't see him as such a... I mean, back then, he seemed so fragile, but now he's, you know, he sits up, he looks around, he scratches your face quite a lot, and, you know, he's just come such a long way in like a matter of 6 months. I mean, hopefully you found that interesting. You know, basically that's all I can say. Thank you for listening.